All right, gang, got a new radio for you. N5 TAB. Rob sent me his X6100 for putting it up on my bench and seeing how well it does against the 7300. I'm going to use the 7300 as the baseline for the rest of these tests as they come along. Have a couple other radios to test, and this is going to be the first of, I think, 3 that I have in the lineup so far. So come along and let's see what it does. I am certainly not expecting great things out of a 6100. However, I want to know how well it does, so it just makes for another great comparison, I think. I'm going to quickly take you through the setup over here. If you want the full details on the setup, I'll put a video up here, which was my first test, and that is between the IC-7300 and the FT991A. Link is right there if you want to see the entire detail of the setup. But for now, I'm just going to get into it. I'm going to run this for 24 hours or so and see what results we get. Thanks, Rob. Really appreciate you sending me the radio. Now, let's get on with the testing. 7300 exactly as it was in the past. We're using 20 meters because I can rely on that band being pretty active most of the day. No noise blanker, no noise reduction. On the 6100, we are on upper sideband digital. Filter 1, which is the broadest filter they have available. It goes from 50 to 2900, so not quite 3K wide, but we'll see what that does. The preamp is not on, and there's no attenuation happening. The noise blanker is off, the noise reduction's off, and the digital noise reduction's off. We're plugged in, we're listening on 20 meters, and the test is up and running. I'll come back to this tomorrow and see where we are. The battle is over! Whose radio will reign supreme? Well, you know. One thing I have to note about the 6100 is that it has a BNC for input, and that requires me to have an adapter on it. So I have a little bit of insertion loss. However, Jim W6LG, I'll put a video right there, goes over insertion loss and what the reality of it is. I can tell you that the video that I saw from him, which is what I'm going to put right there, he put 10 connectors in a row and measured insertion loss at 0.1 dB, I think it was, if I remember right. It was 0.1 dB or 0.01 dB. Just fair disclosure, I had to put an adapter in the line. However, I don't believe that adapter, the insertion loss of that adapter amounts to much. With that said, let's get on with the results. Radio Battle Royale number 2 is finished. Let's look at this massacre. Or is it a massacre? Could it be a massacre? Again, the radios are set as Radio A and Radio B as to not give away the answer right out of the gate. I think the numbers are going to be kind of obvious. This is by no means what I expected. I really expected to be this way worse than it really is. However, here, let's talk about the numbers. Let's go over them on both radios. We're looking at 25,613 packets received. That's a sizable number of packets. Mind you, this test ran a little over an entire day. In addition to that, Radio A received a whopping 20,190 more packets than Radio B. Radio B, oddly enough, also received 1,405 packets that Radio A never heard. So there's something to be said for that, right? So the total for Radio A is 45,803 packets. The total for Radio B is 27,018 packets, making for a total difference of 18,785 packets. That amounts to 78.8% better reception by Radio A than Radio B. And oddly enough, Radio B outshone Radio A by 5.49% on the additional packets. When you weigh it all in, the net difference is 73.34% in favor of Radio A. Now let's look at the differences in the average signal-to-noise ratio for each radio. On all the packets received by both radios, Radio A had an average signal-to-noise ratio of 2.59 dB, and Radio B had an average signal-to-noise ratio of negative 7.35 dB. That's a sizable difference. You're talking about a doubling of power 3 times, or a doubling of sensitivity 3 times, almost. Then when we look at just the packets that radio A received, we're looking at a negative 11 signal to noise ratio, and radio B, a negative 9.04 signal to noise ratio. The sensitivity of radio B obviously needs some help. Looking at the mean signal to noise ratio on the packets where both radios heard the packets, radio A has a mean signal to noise ratio of 2, and radio B has a mean signal to noise ratio of negative 8. Remember that we're talking about dB. Higher is better in this case. On the packets that only radio A heard, the mean signal to noise ratio is negative 12, and the mean signal to noise ratio on radio B is negative 11, meaning that radio A was able to discern 1 dB of difference in signal over radio B. So it was able to pull out information with less of a signal by 1 dB. Overall, I expected the numbers to be way worse for radio B. And I'll give you to the count of 3 to guess which one radio B is, okay? 1, 2, 3. Yeah, you guessed it. Radio B is the Xiegu X6100. For the money, I have to say, it's better than I expected. I really expected the Xiegu to get hit pretty hard, and it did, but it didn't go down easy. I expected the numbers to be way worse. So which radio's next? Don't know yet. I'm working on trying to get a hold of a couple other radios to put them up side by side. You will see them as they come along. I want to thank Rob N5TAB for lending me his X6100 for this experiment. I really appreciate it, dude. I thank you for lending it to me and helping me make this video. I also want to thank Chris, KC3PIB, because without his software, this would be drastically harder for me. Thank you for the software, Chris. Also, Chris has published the software in GitHub, so I'll put a link down in the doobly-doo with a link to the software, so you can run the software too if you want to run 2 instances of WSJTX to compare 2 different radios. Thanks to my patrons, because without them, this would be a whole lot harder. I appreciate their assistance with their monthly support. If you want to become a patron, I will also have a link down in the doobly-doo for that. And we'll catch you guys on the next one. 7-3, everybody.